Okay, Chair, we're now live.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Ben Attrell. I'm a solicitor employed by the Council. This is a licensing subcommittee. Can we have a nomination for the chair, please?
I'd like to nominate
Councillor Udy.
Okay.
I second that.
That's carried. Councillor Udy, you're as chair of the licensing committee. In any event, you're also chairing this subcommittee. Over to you.
Think alike.
Oh, thank you, councillors. Good morning, everybody. I'm Councillor Claire Udy, and welcome to the Licensing Subcommittee meeting. This meeting is being broadcast to enable the press and public to view the meeting. We are meeting virtually in response to the limitations placed on governments by the COVID-19 pandemic. Until recently, the law generally stated that all members had to be present in the room to make formal decisions at meetings, although it is arguable that this did not apply to the Licensing Committee hearings under the Licensing Act 2003. However, in any event, the law has been amended in response to COVID-19 emergency, and councils are now able to hold all public meetings virtually. For the purposes of this meeting, and having been advised by the City Solicitor, I can confirm that the meeting shall be run pursuant to Section 78 of the Coronavirus Act 2020 regulations and made thereunder, and the Licensing Act 2003 (Hearing Regulations 2005), which enable the authority to establish its own procedure. Members are reminded to be available throughout the meeting and indicate if they need to leave the proceedings at any point. All three members must be present at all times to be quorate. If at any part evidence is missed by any of the members due to connectivity or other issues, please raise the matter as soon as possible so it can be addressed. Members, officers and participants are requested they keep their microphones on mute and only turn these on when they are called to speak. Members of the committee who wish to speak should use the chat facility and simply write their name. Please do not use the chat facility for anything else except to raise a point of order. I will also accept hands as well. They're probably a lot easier to see. If there are technical difficulties, we will endeavour to resolve these and where necessary have a brief adjournment, but the meeting can proceed where quorate. I will now explain the running order of this meeting. First of all, members will declare any interest. The licensing officer will then present the report, and the applicant and the members of the public who have made representations may ask questions in that order. The applicant will then present their case. Members of the public who have made representations may then ask questions in that order. There have been no, oh my God, my jaw just went. I'm going to carry on reading this and they're just going to have to deliver it where it is. There have been no representations from responsible authorities. The members of the public will then present their cases in alphabetical order. Members will then ask any questions of the public, followed by the applicant. Finally, everyone will have the opportunity to sum up their case, starting with the members of the public and then the applicant. The meeting will then end. Members will then meet privately for their deliberations and to reach a decision. The written decision will be circulated to all parties as soon as possible. To reiterate, each party will have an opportunity to ask questions at the appropriate time and to make their own representation when asked to do so. Parties are reminded that representations are strictly limited to those points already raised in your respective written representations. You are able to expand upon those points but not add new. You can be assured that members have read the papers before, and as a result you are asked not to simply read your written representation. I'm not going to get the door, but I heard a red thing come through. It's fine. They'll probably put it in my recycling bin. Anyway, instructions. I would like everyone to introduce themselves. Can everyone please reply by stating your name and saying present? I first of all call Councillor Dave Ashmore.
Dave Ashmore, present.
Thank you very much. Councillor Tom Coles.
Tom Coles, present, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Chris Atwell, who is present as an observer today.
Good morning, Chair. Nice to see you. Chris Atwell, present.
Thank you, Chris. For the sake of being an observer, Chris is new to the licensing committee and he must observe some committees before he's allowed to sit on them. He is not allowed to say a single word, but he is allowed to sit in our deliberations, but he is not allowed to speak at all times. So just to make that clear today. Could I ask the officers to confirm that they are present as follows? Ben Attrell, Legal Advisor.
Yes. Good morning, Chair. I've already spoken this morning. One thing just to add on the observer, if any party has any objection to the observer witnessing and purely observing proceedings, please do let us know. Thank you.
No problem. Derek Stone, Principal Licensing Officer.
Good morning, Chair, present, and I have no objection to Councillor Atwell being present as an observer.
Thank you. Lisa Gallagher, Local Democracy Officer.
Good morning, Chair. Lisa Gallagher, present.
Also have Jonathan Waite, Democratic Services Officer. Don't know if you're here or not. But you're...
Yeah, Jonathan Waite, Democratic Services. Hello.
Hello. Can I ask now if the following are present? Helen Hubbard, who is the applicant company director.
Yep, Helen Hubbard present.
Thank you. Stuart Elliott, who is the applicant.
Yes, Chairman, present.
And Pamela Elliott.
Yes, present.
Thank you. Could I just ask a question? Are you all speaking separately or are you speaking as one group today?
As one group. We'll be speaking as one group.
Thank you. That makes it a bit easier on me. I'll just tick that off on my list. Could I also ask, so I have members of the public here. Are the following members, are the following members of the public who have made a representation present? Sarah Jones, who I have on authority that you do not want to speak today, but I think you are here.
Yes, present.
Thank you very much. Mark Lee.
Yes, present.
I have it down that you do not want to speak either. Is that okay?
That's correct.
Thank you. Alison Liddell. Not here. That's fine. Alison did not want to speak either. Mrs. Penny Reid, who is representing the management company and some of the residents.
Good morning, Chair. My name is Penelope Reid and I'm present.
Thank you. I have it written here that Penny is going to represent John Beardale, John Gittins, Rodney McDonald, Jeffrey Slavetti, Philip Taylor, who have written representations, and they're happy to be represented on behalf of Penny here. I'm just saying that for purposes of the meeting. Councillor Linda Symes.
Yes, present. Thank you.
You are representing Anthony Welsh, is that correct?
That's right.
Thank you very much. Is Anthony Welsh here? It says on my list that he might be. If he's not, that's fine. I have a Paul Williams.
Yes, present.
Thank you. Are you speaking today?
Yes, and I think that I'm speaking for John Biddle.
Yeah, cool. I can put that down because he's sent in a representation. And Ed Wright.
Present, but I'm not speaking.
Thank you. I will cross you off my list because it said that you were. If there's anybody else who I have missed that is now in attendance, could you speak now, please, and we'll get you introduced.
Yes, good morning. My name's Paul Brindley. I live in Marine Gate and my house is directly behind the ballroom of the planned hotel.
Hello, Paul. Have you made a written representation beforehand?
Yes, I have.
Would you like to... cool, thank you. Would you like to speak?
It depends on how the conversation goes, please.
Okay, I can add you to the list, definitely, but you don't have to speak if you don't want to, if you feel like points have been raised.
Thank you.
That's perfectly fine. Paul Brindley, was it? Yeah, cool, thank you. I've written that down. I will now move on to agenda item number 2, declarations of members' interests. Do we members have any declarations that they would like to make right now? Sorry, I need to put my screen on so I can see you shaking your heads. You're not.
Yeah, it's a no from me, Chair.
Thank you.
No from me as well, Chair.
I need to ask you as well, Councillor Atwell.
No, Chair, no interest.
Thank you very much. Oh, and Councillor Symes, even though you're speaking on behalf of the residents, I still have to ask you, apparently, in my list.
No interest.
Thank you. Thank you, members. I'll move on to licensing, agenda item number 3, which is the Licensing Act 2003, application for the grant of a premises licence for the Grand Hotel Excelsior International Limited at the Royal Marines Museum, Eastney Esplanade, Southsea. Please could I ask Derek Stone as the Principal Licensing Officer to present his report. Thank you.
Good morning, members. So the purpose of this hearing today is for the committee to consider an application for the grant of a new premises licence pursuant to Section 18 of the Licensing Act 2003. The premises licence application has been submitted on behalf of Grand Hotel Excelsior International Limited and relates to the former Royal Marines Museum on Eastleigh Esplanade at Southsea. You will see in Appendix A the application together with a plan at Appendix B, and they relate to the planned opening of a 5-star hotel. Part of the operational side of running any hotel is the authorisation of licensable activities in order to undertake various functions and to permit as part of those functions the sale and supply of alcohol, music and dance, etc. I have detailed in my report the times that licensable activities have been requested, which I do not need to repeat, and you'll hear during the hearing that the most contentious issue, I think, is the midnight finish for the external activities such as dance and live music. The provisions relating to the grant of a premises licence are contained within Part 3 of the Licensing Act 2003 and associated statutory regulations. Public notice has been given by way of press notice, a premises notice, and local ward councillors were notified of the application. There are no grounds, therefore, for the committee to reject the application for non-compliance with the prescribed advertising requirements. The matter has been referred to the committee for determination following receipt of relevant representations from other persons, namely 18 residents from nearby properties, together with one from Marine Gate Management Company, Southsea Limited, who is the freeholder of what was the old Royal Marine Barracks. One representation has been received from a local resident in support of the application. Members, you will have seen, excuse me, the lights has gone off in the office. Members, you will have seen the representation at Appendix C and will be familiar with the concerns that have been raised, so I will not repeat them, and you have several people present today who will address you in person. The applicant has detailed in the operating schedule the steps intended to support and promote the licensing objectives, to include 24-hour security, extensive CCTV, door concierge service and detailed operating policies and procedures. Of note, members, none of the responsible authorities have raised any objections to this application. The applicant has agreed conditions with the police and these are attached at Appendix D. Members, in your bundle, which I hope will be helpful to you, at Appendix E is a copy of the correspondence between the applicant and all parties who made representations once concerns had been raised. This was in an attempt to address those concerns and avoid a licensing subcommittee hearing if possible, and indeed one representation was withdrawn. At Appendix F, members, is a copy of the premises licence for the old Royal Marine Museum, which was surrendered on the 30th of July 2019. When determining the application, the committee must have regard to the promotion of the licensing objectives, which, as you know, are the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm. You also have to have regard to the Licensing Act 2003, the current statutory guidance issued by the Home Secretary in accordance with Section 182 of the Act, the representations, including supporting information presented by all parties, the adopted statement of licensing policy, and the human rights of all parties concerned to ensure both a fair and balanced hearing. Also, the public sector equality duty, which requires public bodies to have due regard to. And finally, members, judgments of the High Court and your legal advisor can give you guidance on that should that become necessary. The statement of licensing policy lays down a general approach to the determination of licensing applications, and any such application will be considered on its individual merits. Equally, any person permitted by the Act to make relevant representations to the committee will have those representations considered on their individual merit. The committee should also have regard to paragraphs 7.1 and 7.5 in relation to such circumstances where it may be appropriate to consider the imposition of conditions on a premises licence. The updated statutory guidance issued by the Home Secretary in accordance with Section 182 of the Act refers to considerations of applications for the grant of a premises licence. At 937, it states, as a matter of practice, licensing authorities should seek to focus the hearing on the steps considered appropriate to promote the particular licensing objective or objectives that are given rise to the specific representations and avoid straying into undisputed areas. A responsible authority or other person may choose to rely on their written representation. They may not add further representations to those disclosed to the applicant prior to the hearing, but they may expand on their existing representation and should be allowed sufficient time to do so within reasonable and practical limits. The authority's determination should be evidence-based, justified as being appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives, and proportionate to what it is intended to achieve. The licensing authority may not impose any conditions unless its discretion has been exercised following receipt of relevant representations and it is satisfied as a result of a hearing that it is appropriate to impose conditions to promote one or more of the 4 licensing objectives. It is possible that in some cases no additional conditions will be appropriate to promote the licensing objectives. Finally, members, I'll just remind you about Chapter 11, which talks about the review proceedings, which states the proceedings set out in the 2003 Act for reviewing premises licence represents a key protection for the community where problems associated with the licensing objectives occur after the grant of a premises licence. At any stage, a responsible authority or any other person may ask the licensing authority to review the licence because of a matter arising at the premises in connection with any of the 4 licensing objectives. Members, I don't think I need to say any more at this stage. I will be on hand throughout the proceedings to assist if that's necessary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I do have some questions, but I'm going to go to Councillor Ashmore, Councillor Coles first to see if you have any questions.
Not at this moment, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Not at this time, Chair.
Thank you. Derek, a few things. I've noted on the application that the playing of recording music, playing of live music is until 3 in the morning, but the playing of recorded music is until midnight. That's confused me somewhat. Could you explain that? Could they only play live from midnight until 3 and not play a record or something?
It's probably better if the applicant explains what they've applied for, the Chair.
Oh, okay. I will ask that later on when the applicants give the. It just confused me. But in technical terms, does that mean if the license was granted in full today and it hit midnight, they would only be allowed to play music if it was live?
My understanding, the midnight was for the external use.
Okay, maybe I'm reading the wrong part of the application here. I need to try and find it again. I'll get it up in just a second.
I've got the performance of live music Monday to Sunday 9 o'clock to 0300 externally to cease at 0300.
Yeah. Oh, externally. That's probably why I'm reading the report completely wrong. Please ignore me.
And I think that's probably as you'll hear throughout the proceedings, that's the contentious issue for the residents. Obviously, they don't want external activities taking place that late at night, but that'll all become clear in due course.
Of course. Yeah, on number 2 on the committee, on section 2 on the committee report, it does say playing of recorded music Monday to Sundays 0000 hours to 0000 hours, and then it says performance of live music Monday to Sunday 0900 to 0300 hours. I think I'm just being a bit finicky, just wondering if like I said, if you stopped playing recorded music at midnight, could you still then play live music, but you're not allowed by law at this point because of the licensable activities to not play pre-recorded music? Ben, could you?
I think the recorded music is 24 hours. 00 to 00 Monday to Sunday.
Hey. I do apologise.
So if you liken it to perhaps say they have a restaurant and they're playing background music.
Got it. It was me reading it completely wrong. No, so I do apologise. My natural hair colour is blonde. No, just ignore me completely. I did have another question. Talking about other hotels in the area, I know the Queen's Hotel is at the other end of Southsea, but they have the same kind of residential aspect because they have that high-rise block right next to it. Could you tell me what the relevant hours of that place is? And I'm sorry to put you on the spot if you don't have them to hand.
No, that's fine, Chair. I've researched all of the main hotels, so I can give you the information in relation to all of those. But in particular, the Queen's Hotel, they have they're open to the public from 7:30 in the morning to 02:30, but obviously 24 hours for guests and bona fide visitors. They have music dancing until 0200 hours. And there is a condition on their license in regard to all external noise has to cease at 2300 hours.
Thank you. Is it the same for the Best Western Royal Beach?
The Royal Beach, music dancing again until 0200 hours, 24 hours for residents, open to the public until 2:30 in the morning. They can have both on and off sales.
Yeah.
And it's similar to around the whole of the city, to be honest with you.
Thank you. That's it for me, and I apologise for being a bit dense a little bit earlier. Councillors, do you have any questions? Specifically, Dave and Tom.
I was going through the report really quickly as you were going on there, Chair. But yeah, to see what the thing was about the music outside, and it says externally to cease at midnight. So I assume that means there will be no outside performances, noise or otherwise, after midnight on any of the days. Are we safe on that ground to assume that everything else will be going on inside the building?
That's correct, and the applicant can obviously fill in more detail when they speak shortly.
Okay, I just want to make sure that was what the actual definition was, just in case. Thank you. I'm
so embarrassed by it as well. It's not me to not pay attention to detail. Councillor Cars, do you have any questions?
No, Councillor Ashmore's covered what I was going to say.
Thank you. Oh, Penny went and came back. I'm just going to admit Mrs. Reid. Just wait a second. Hello, Penny. I saw that you came back in. I don't think you've missed anything of note. So
no, I did not. Thank you. It was just I think a bit of BT helpfulness.
That's perfectly acceptable. That's the one thing that we've tried to overcome in these meetings is terrible internet, which unfortunately we've not overcome. I'm going to move on to the applicant for questions. The applicants, do you have any questions of Derek Stone at all? Sorry, can you unmute?
Just unmuted. I think no questions.
Thank you. I do get the application now. I apologise again. Penny Reid, do you have any questions of Derek Stone at all?
No, I would just say to the committee that I've been immensely helped by Derek's exchange of information as we've been coming up to the hearing. Thank you.
Oh no, that's lovely. Thank you. Derek is great. Councillor Symes, do you have any questions? Oh,
no. No, an observation really. I live within about 50 yards of the Queen's Hotel. There have been numerous complaints about they have a programme on a Sunday afternoon. I personally don't complain about it because I chose to live here and it's during the day. They have very few events at night, but I do know that environmental health were dealing with the problem of the noise from that hotel. So it is affecting the residents there. I'd just like to flag that up in case anyone thinks it's had that licence for years and nobody's flagged up any problems. They have.
No, that's perfectly acceptable. I can turn that into a question for Derek if you want. Derek, it's nice to know, but have there been complaints about the Queen's Hotel? I would say in the last year, because I know they've been having those garden events, especially during coronavirus as well.
I can confirm that Environmental Health have engaged with the Queen's Hotel in regard to noise. The condition was put on the licence following a hearing a while ago, but members, obviously each application needs to be judged on their individual merits, and I'm sure Ben will advise you on that. It's not one size fits all.
Thank you though. Paul Williams, do you have any questions for Derek at all?
No, I'm okay at the moment.
Thank you. And Paul Brindley, do you have any questions for Derek?
No, thank you. Not at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to move to the applicants now to state your case, and then we'll ask some questions too. So over to you. Thank you very much.
Yes. Okay. Good morning, everyone. We don't really have an awful lot to add to our application, other than obviously we have also done some research as well. The hotels in question that you've been referring to, none of which are five-star hotels. So obviously we were looking at the local population of five-star hotels in the sort of southern area, of which there actually aren't that many. The nearest one to refer to would be the one in Southampton, which is what we've looked at, and their application is exceptionally similar to ours in terms of what they've asked for and what they've been granted on times of indoor, outdoor, etc. So I don't think other than that we've got much else to add to our original application and our letter to the residents and to the committee.
You're on mute. So I was on mute. I noticed as soon as I said something. That's lovely. Thank you. I'll go first with some questions. Just for the purposes of this meeting and the fact that you want to bring our five-star hotel to the city. Obviously, there's been talk in the press for years about having a five-star hotel, but could you tell me the discernible kind of difference between a 4-star and a 5-star, please?
Well, I think, I think there's obviously the quality of service and, the quality of rooms and basically the functions and everything that's offered. I think you can argue, from the point of view of a structure, there's not much difference, but from the point of view of how you look after the guests, that little bit extra for everything, has to be taken care of in a lot more detail. And, obviously it goes to, you don't want it to become more rowdy and noisy, and you want it to act like a 5-star hotel, and that's obviously what we intend to do in that area.
Thank you. Is the majority, would you say that probably the majority of your events that you'd be holding would be kind of weddings? You're going for that upmarket wedding kind of market, and bits and bobs, like, I don't want to say posh garden parties because it's 5-star. It could be just normal garden parties, etc. Sorry.
Yeah, and again, I wouldn't like to say upmarket weddings, because that puts a connotation a bit like the, with the conversations we're on the telly. I think what we want to do is be, open to all, but when you're open to all, you want people to abide by the rules, and it will be our job to make sure that, that people do abide by the rules, and that, the behavior is appropriate to the area and to the building and to the functions going on.
No, thank you. No, sorry for me to say upmarket weddings. I think the majority of us in Portsmouth have been to a wedding at the Royal Marines Hotel at some point in our lives. It was a very popular wedding venue here until it closed down. Councillors, do you have any other questions at all? Hello, Councillor Ashmore.
I was just going to follow on from what you were saying, Chair. Do you know how often there's likely to be external events? Have you got a approximation or something in mind so that we know roughly how many a month there would be?
Well, I think that's going to vary from, year to year. I mean, obviously this last year wouldn't have been very many, but it will vary from year to year, and it will vary on the seasons as well in terms of indoor and outdoor.
Right. Okay, and obviously, I think the chair's gone over it. Well, it's going to be mainly different kind of external events. It's not somewhere where it's going to turn into an all-night rave, for example. So there's going to be different connotations. But of course, the residents are concerned with noise, regardless of where it's from. We've got to take that into consideration as well. But yeah, I just wanted to know if there was any kind of idea of how many there'd be, the frequency of it. But as you've said, it varies. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ashmore. Coles, do you have a question at all?
Not this time.
Thank you. I think I might have another one. On the application, I'm reading through the representations as well. One of the contested points is that outside until midnight. I see that hotels in the area normally have to 2300, and the residents in most of them are quite agreeable around 2300. Is there any leeway that you'll be able to maybe accept that today at all? So to save arguments with residents, because I feel like this is the main point of the licensing application today in the 3 AM kind of.
Well, I don't really want to get into, you know, bickering about an hour, because you could imagine that when, you know, if there's a very nice wedding and everybody's enjoying themselves, and you've got to then, you know, wrap them all up at, you know, 11 o'clock and send them home, and they all want to stay an extra half an hour. They're always difficult. So we would like you to consider the, you know, the rule to midnight, and, you know, and let's let the committee, you know, make some decisions rather than, you know, get into a negotiation right at the moment. But I don't believe, you know, we've had examples of this in our hotels, you know, particularly in Malta, and, you know, it's not so much the residents that you have to worry about. You have to worry about the residents within the residents that live nearby. You have to worry about the residents within the hotel, and the residents within the hotel are far more likely to complain about any noise that's affecting them, because they've, you know, just paid quite a lot of money to stay in there. And, you know, we're obviously very, very conscious that this is kept under control and done properly and looked after as it should be looked after.
No, thank you. Thought I'd try and get that out there early. I will move on to the speaking reps to ask you questions, if that's okay. Penny Reid, do you have any questions for the applicant at all?
Thank you. I'd just like to follow on, Chair, to your question and Stuart Elliott's response. If I don't think we have objections in the sense that nobody wants to spoil a nice wedding or a nice personal family event, but we see no reason why staying outside beyond 2300 should be necessary if they can come back into the hotel and continue their celebrations without you spoiling it. So that's I shall build on that a little bit more in my own presentation. So the question is, would you be prepared to accept a 2300 limit, even if you have to then make some extra arrangements for not ensuring that the noise doesn't disturb your guests inside the hotel?
I think what we said, you know, just now is our position, and obviously we'd like to hear everybody's, you know, but you know what you got to remember, when people are outside, we have the most beautiful waterfront, and, you know, not everybody wants to pack up and go inside, because, you know, we want to sort of, you know, let them feel comfortable and let them enjoy it. But let the committee, I think we've given our position on where we would like it to be, and we'll let the, you know, the licensing committee come down or, you know, agree to it. So
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Symes, do you have any questions of the applicant, please? Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm mute, I know. I wanted to ask, you have an outside terrace on your restaurant as well. Will diners be allowed to stay out there indefinitely, or will there be a time when that terrace will be closed off?
that's a very interesting point. I think if people are dining there, they should be, and they want to stay out there a little bit later, they should be allowed to stay there, because the only thing we looked at that is probably where some of the smokers will want to go and sit outside and have a cigarette. So yeah, we haven't, you know, I don't think we'll be playing live music on the terrace or music on the terrace, but I think if people are quietly dining there, I don't think that should make an issue.
Is there music in the restaurant?
I'm sure there will be some music you know, background music in the restaurant, or some music in the restaurant. You know, people do like to hear music when they're dining, and, you know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. That makes me want to, I'll come back to Rocky right at the end to ask a question, because I'm going to write it down so I remember to in a minute to ask. Paul Williams, do you have any questions for the applicant at all?
Yeah, just a couple really. You mentioned earlier on about your hotel in Malta. I was wondering what sort of relationship you have with your local residents down there. Do the residents there, are they as close as we are in Marine Gate? What sort of area is it that is in Malta that you're drawing your experience from?
We're right in Floriana, and we have the residents, very, very close. But we actually brought a whole new life when we first went to Malta. The area, Valletta and Floriana was considered dead, and nobody ever wanted to go there. And we developed the 5-star hotel there, and actually now people talk about going to Valletta more than they do talk about going to Malta. We changed the whole, view of how it's perceived and how it's looked at. So it did bring, a lot of quality, a lot of life, a lot of employment, and I think you can see this with, the support we get from the mayor and everything in that area. It's been a tremendous boost for Malta. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose that when looking at the little research I've done, I looked at it on Google Earth or Maps or whatever it is, just to get a feel for it. It does seem an area in Malta where there's quite a few hotels, and so it seems to be quite an area which has, if you like, a more vibrant environment rather than I suppose what we have in Marine Gate. And it's from that point of view, I was wondering whether you've done any research to understand what impact noise would have specifically at Marine Gate in terms of when you're thinking about your licensing application.
I think, first of all, if I may say, in Malta, that most of the hotels are across the water from us, and we were one of the few that, one of the few actually large hotels. There is one up towards the centre near the entrance, which is a small one with only 100 and something rooms. So there are not many hotels where we are per se. Noise, obviously, we're very conscious of noise, and noise has all sorts of different effect on people, and people's whether they go to sleep or don't go to sleep, or whether they want to come out and enjoy it. So trying to measure noise and trying to get it. But what we were struck by was that when the building was for sale, people wanted to do something with the building that would be appropriate to the area and bring some quality and bring some life and bring some employment into that area. And obviously there are many things you could do with it that wouldn't live up to a 5-star standard, that wouldn't have the same goodwill effect. But we had a lot of support from everybody concerned, including, all the way up to, we were hosted to dinner by even, Princess Anne and the Marines, because they really, pleased with what we're going to do, and the mayor of Portsmouth, and everybody was very keen to see this become a 5-star hotel. Because actually I was absolutely amazed. As you know, I was born in Portsmouth and left a long time ago, but to think you've got a city that big and you got no 5-star hotel, you've got to ask yourself what's wrong with it.
Now, I suppose in a way, I'm a bit of a newbie to this, so this process is fairly new to somebody. I've not had a hotel open up next to me before, so it's trying to get a feel for how the licensing process works and what it is you're applying for, and how that's going to work on the ground. And it's sort of strange in a way, in that it seems from a layman's point of view that there seems to be the process seems rather odd in that you're putting forward to have a 5-star hotel, but the if you like, the planning permission side of it and the noise profile that would come from understanding in detail how you would operate with the plan that you actually have, it sounds like a bit a cart before the horse, if you see what I mean. I'm not sure whether I'm just being ignorant here, but it's you've got some really good intentions. It all sounds really great. It's from a point of view of a resident, you've got some nice pictures of things you want to do. That looks great, but there could be a difference between what you've got and what you eventually end up with in terms of your planning permission, and that has a direct impact on potentially noise and the way in which the area operates. especially as Councillor Science is saying, is that my house, my flat is right next to the Royal Marine Museum, and I can see and I can hear people talking on the balcony outside the hotel, which is where the diary room is going to be. And so I'm all for the hotel. I think it's a great idea. It's lack of information and data that's just making me nervous.
Could I come in and answer that a little bit? I understand what issues there are, and especially the division between planning and licensing as well. As a licensing authority today, if we come to a decision, there are a few things we can do, maybe around noise nuisance and noise restriction, and maybe glasses outside and things like that. But planning normally deal with the chunk of kind of when you're changing a use of something where you can really hammer down on restriction of noise, maybe around extractor vans and stuff like that. I do understand it's quite frustrating for us as councillors as well, because I'm also on the planning committee. I'm unsure if a planning application has been submitted, and that's just me not knowing at all. But if it came to planning, I'd also have to consider this at planning as a fresh application, and knowing that it's completely different to what they've asked for on licensing as well. So I get your issue, if that's okay, Mr. Williams, but we can come back to you later and you can maybe talk a little bit more in detail about that, because I think it's quite helpful for people that are watching publicly to know about how these applications come through and how we deal with them as an authority. Did you have any other questions at all?
No, I'll stop there.
Thank you. Paul Brindley, do you have any questions at all of the applicant?
Just the point is that all of the discussions have gone around what time the function will end. Even if the function ends at midnight, that is not the end of the noise pollution that will be caused to residents, because obviously cars will drive up to the central steps there to collect the main guests, whoever they might be. So the fact that the outside actions or functions are to stop at midnight, that doesn't really mean that the noise that we will hear will actually end at that particular time. So how do you propose that we get past that?
Is that addressed to us or?
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, obviously, I mean, you're now talking about a very, specific point of whether you want a 5-star hotel there or not, because you will have vehicles come to collect people, and there will be vehicles. I mean, there's nothing in the area to stop people driving along the road, along the waterfront road. It's difficult to say that it's moving, but what we could say now, everybody's moving towards electric vehicles, so probably by its own the rules and regulations, we may be working towards that anyway. But I think it's also interesting to add a thing that even if you buy an apartment in the area, there's no rules and regulations. People will still have can still make noise, and they could disturb. You could look at it the other way around. They could disturb the residents of the hotel. There's no quid pro quo on that. And as I said earlier, obviously if we want this to be a success, we got to work within the rules of pleasing everybody. So I think we're very much aware of that.
I think as well, you've got to take into account that the building's been underused for a number of years, and whatever use was made of the building, whether it's a 5-star hotel or whether or not it's turned into any other thing, it's going that cars and vehicles would happen regardless. I can't see of any use of that building, whether it was turned into apartments or whatever you use it for. There would be car noise, and there will be some level of disruption or noise or whatever. I think you've got to unfortunately, you've got to accept that it's not going to stay a dormant, underused building, you know, forever, which is what it's been for a very long time.
I fully accept that. I've lived here for over 20 years and the wedding functions have gone on, and the deliveries and the collections of the items for the wedding functions, I can tell you, have caused disruption. And I'm not sure what time the license was for the previous owners or owners of the building were. Are they compatible with the times that you are asking for now?
They weren't quite the same, no. Obviously, a copy in the pack of the previous license, which shows all the times and everything that they had. Is there any other questions?
Could you please remind me what those times are?
I think maybe the solicitor could answer that quicker than.
Or perhaps Derek.
Yeah, we've all got the application. What specific time were you looking for? Sorry.
What were the times that were granted to the building when it was a wedding function previously that you said that ended in, I think, August 2019?
It's to do with weddings.
I think it was about 11:30, wasn't it, Derek?
I'd have to look. It's in the
It's in there. So
bear with me a second.
closed the window. Let me see.
I've got it. Just bear with me.
We'll go trying to look for it because I noted that it was in Comic Sans, the operating schedule, and I was like, did we issue licenses with all written in Comic Sans? Which kind of, do we still do that?
Okay, so
Specifically wedding thing.
No, and they didn't have outdoor. There's no mention on the old one. There's no detail whether it like inside outside. So,
well, it was non-residential, of course. The Royal Marines Museum was non-residential, so there wasn't an issue of people staying inside the building beyond the limits of the event. They may have used the internal function room, but most of the activities were outside. And when we had the assault course out on the lawn, we had quite a number of guests choosing to go and play out on the assault course beyond the hours the event was supposed to have finished. So we have some information. Plus, I think, Derek, it's true to say that the Royal Marines Association clubhouse in Dunclose, behind the buildings that abuts our property and yours, Mr. Elliott, they have some conditions placed on their outdoor activities which need to finish at 2300.
in relation to the Royal Marine license, which you've got in your appendix, it had a license up until midnight, more or less, dancing up until midnight, music to midnight, and alcohol to 23:30 hours, and it would close at midnight, if that helps.
Thank you. Is that it, Mr. Brindley?
Yes, for now, thank you.
Thank you very much. I was just going to add on that, just a question to Derek very briefly, with regards to a much older licence, because it's clear that licence was granted a very long time ago regarding to limiting outside noise. Normally, you did not put a restriction on that back in the day, did you not?
In relation to the Marine Museum, there was a licensing hearing as a result of them applying for their license. That was back in 2006, and there was a little bit of concern and a lot of misinformation that was put around. People were being led to believe that it was going to become either a nightclub or a theme pub or a theme park or something like that. So it got taken to committee, Chair, and at the committee, the solicitor acting on behalf of the applicant took an agreed condition to stop music or anything externally after 8 o'clock at night. You'll see that on the actual license itself.
Thank you very much for that. Also, I think when we talked about the split between planning and licensing, planning conditions can also limit outside activities as well, as in use of maybe smoking areas. That is correct. Ben, could you just nod? That is correct, that planning can limit those as well. Didn't you know that? No. sorry to ask the licensing solicitor. Sorry, don't worry, just don't listen to me. But I have another question to go back, if possible, for the applicant. Do you have a procedure in place for guests leaving the hotel, as in guests as in who may stay till 3 in the morning listening to live music or recorded music, for instance? More on the fact that there is a long run-off to get out of the hotel grounds, so carriages will have to come, or I don't know where taxis would park, but if you have an exceptional number of, I'm thinking if you had an exceptional number of people at the hotel enjoying an event, them all leaving at the same time could be worrying to myself. So I just wanted to know if you had an established procedure in place to help disperse guests in a reasonable way quite late at night.
Well, there certainly would be a procedure. I mean, if you wouldn't want everything blocked up, and we're fortunate, you know, that we have a very large car park where it can become a holding car park and wouldn't, you know, could be used to decant cars into the area. But keeping in mind that the road along the hotel is more than 50, 60 meters away from the building already. So it's quite a distance already between the entrance road that drives towards the hotel and the residents that were, you know, in the buildings we're talking about.
Thank you very much for that. I have no more questions. So now we would move on to those who have made representations, and I'll start with Penny Reid, if you'd like to state your case, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just to state my role in this presentation, I'm the spokesperson for and a director of Marine Gate Management Company Southsea Limited, which is the freeholder of the neighbouring estate known as Marine Gate, which, along with the proposed hotel, was formerly the Eastney Barracks. Thank you for letting us put our points. I'll endeavour to stay succinct and to the point, and most importantly, factual. Firstly, I want to say we are very supportive of the creation of a five-star hotel and the applicant's expressed commitment to creating and maintaining a five-star environment for the benefit of the hotel guests and visitors. The Eastney area is known for its attractive and undeveloped beachfront area that has scientific significance, and Marine Gate provides a rare oasis of tranquility in this densely populated island city of Portsmouth. We have three key points that we would like the committee to take into account. First of all is my company's duty of care. As the freeholder, we are obligated to investigate any actual or potential nuisance to our leaseholders. So given that this application relates to a premises licence and not to the eventual planning application for the hotel, we are drawing on all our previous experiences of outdoor and indoor events at the former museum, including the weddings, the school proms, corporate private events, military commemorations, even Antiques Roadshow in 2014, and more recently an episode of Flog It. The former museum did not offer residential facilities, but we anticipate that guests and visitors to a hotel would expect to enjoy being or staying outside on a warm summer's evening. Furthermore, there is no mention of the siting of a shelter for resident and non-resident smokers. The application for the sale of alcohol to non-residents until 2 a.m. may expose our private property to intrusion by those seeking to drink after the closure of other local venues. That's our first point. Our second point is, as we have stated already, but I'm going to give you some extra facts, the proximity of residential property. Our freehold property, the land registry reference is HP 480592, is only part of the former Royal Marines Barracks, and many of the 173 residential properties are not shown on the property map provided by the applicant as part of the documentation for this application. At the northern boundary of the applicant's property, there are approximately 6 metres between the main building and the first house on Mountbatten Square, and approximately 10.5 metres between the main building and Wilkinson House at the eastern end of the 3-storey apartment building in Gunners Row. The apartment building in Gunners Row is Grade 2 listed, and there are more than 200 single glazed sash windows, of which half are in the southern elevation. There are significant and costly restrictions for any leaseholder considering changing windows to improve both energy conservation and soundproofing in this listed building. 15 of the 42 apartments in the building immediately abut the lawned area in front of the proposed hotel. In hot weather, ventilation is obtained by opening sash windows in the apartments and doors and windows in the houses in Mountbatten Square and Pitcairn Mews. Any limitation to ventilation options could cause overheating with physical and/or mental health implications for residents, many of whom are elderly. Our final point is about noise pollution. We've already pointed out we've got various experience of the events and the effects of wind direction, hard and soft surface reverberation, the buns, etc. We have, in Maringate, our own lease covenants regarding activities on the parade ground, excuse me, that forms part of our property. We'd like the committee to note that the design and semi-enclosure of the parade ground is common in military establishments precisely to enable the sound travel of even the most whispered commands. With buildings on 3 sides of the adjoining open areas for both the applicant and our property, there is a well-known echo phenomenon on of noise and music from as far away as Southsea Common and the hovercraft station in certain weather and wind conditions. We can also see from the documents, as Councillor Symes pointed out earlier, that were included with the application, that there's a proposed outdoor dining area which would be in line with the top floor of the Gunners Row apartment building. And although no plans have been approved yet, this would be a potentially direct line of noise travel. I've mentioned already the precedent of the premises licence granted to the Royal Marines Association Pavilion in Dun Close. My company, the Maringate Management Company Southsea Limited, proposes to obtain a specialist assessment of baseline noise climate covering daytime, evening and weekend hours. Noise modelling software will help us identify potential noise propagation, taking into account both natural and man-made structures, and we consider this a sensible precaution. We are aware that the applicant will in due course provide a noise impact report during the planning process in order to comply with building regulations. This is of less concern to us at the moment than assessing the probability of noise pollution in a currently quiet environment. The final point has already been well covered. The licensing officer citing the precedent of the premises licence of the Queen's Hotel, but we contend that a hotel site between busy roads in central Southsea is not comparable with Eastney. We do accept, however, that a comparable licence that restricts outdoor activities, including the sale of alcohol, to 2300 would be appropriate. Finally, we hope it is clear that Maringate Management Company wants to liaise with the applicant in a neighbourly and positive climate to develop a productive relationship and share our 25 years experience on this site to support the creation of a successful hotel. I know that our residents welcome and endorse this approach. We therefore formally request the committee to restrict the hours of outdoor entertainment and the serving of alcohol, including the dismantling and clearance of associated equipment, to 2300 every day, with a restriction on the number of outdoor events per year on open land. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Mrs. Reid. I'd like to now move on to Councillor Symes, please. Thank you. Shall we do question? No, sorry.
Yeah, I thought it might.
I was going to go through you all, but then I realised you've got to do questions of each individual person before I go back. It was me just being a bit silly. Members, do you have any questions of Mrs. Reid at all?
Not at this time, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do the applicants have any questions of Mrs. Reid at all?
Not at the moment, and just like to thank her for her comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Symes, do you have any questions for Mrs. Reid at all?
No.
No. Same again for Mr. Williams.
No.
Thank you. And same again for Mr. Brindley. Just questions for Mrs. Reid at all? No.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to move on to Councillor Symes. Thank you very much.
Okay. Firstly, I'd like to say how pleased we all are at the proposal that this beautiful building is going to become a 5-star hotel. However, calling it that at the moment is jumping the gun a bit, as there is no rating issued by the bodies responsible for determining what star a hotel deserves, and there is no live application at the moment. I do believe that the plans are absolutely stunning, and I do hope that this comes about. But with the best will in the world, plans change, things change, and what would happen in this event would be that building would still be there, but with a 3 AM licence attached to it. So I think that just deserves some consideration. The Royal Marines Museum is joined to properties housed in what was once Royal Marines Barracks, which we've already covered. Events held at the hotel will have people drinking and eating yards from residential properties until midnight. Under this proposal, visitors can also drink at the hotel until 2 AM, if not part of an event. With those attending the event able to drink until 3 AM, this means comings and goings until the early hours of the morning, potentially 7 days a week, without taking into account staff leaving once they have finished their duties and clearing up. There are 4 licensing objectives, and one of those is the prevention of public nuisance. In asking for a licence that will create noise and disturbance until the early hours of the morning, this will be a reason to reduce the hours to a more reasonable time. The residents' right to be able to enjoy their residential amenities is also a condition of living in a conservation area in planning terms. When I say noise and disturbance, I'm not suggesting there will be rowdy behaviour, but people leaving, talking to each other, closing car doors and driving off is disturbing when there is no other discernible background noise. The direction of the wind also makes a difference on the seafront. I think it would be reasonable to reduce the hours applied for until 11 PM. For their temporary events licence, they could also apply 12 times, or is it 10 or 12 times, I'm not sure, so they could have much later events on the occasion when it was necessary. We all like to go home at the end of the day and relax. If granted, this could potentially destroy the lives of those who took care to buy properties where they felt they would be able to enjoy a relatively peaceful environment. And I really think that last point is important. When people live, when you have new neighbours next door and you've had somebody living there for a long time that's made no noise, and you suddenly have a family living next door, even that creates quite a lot of problems. But to have the possibility of live events every day of the week and people being able to come up to the hotel, park their cars until 2 o'clock in the morning, I really think is unnecessary. And if all goes well, and if it's found there's no problems, they can always apply for a variation of that licence to extend the hours at a later time. I think that's covered all my points. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Symes. Members, do you have any questions?
No, thank you, Chair.
Thank
No,
you.
thank you, Chair.
Applicants, do you have any questions at all of that?
The only thing that I think we should add at this point is that we didn't, there were no representations from environmental health. So, and they are the people that take into account all of the noise considerations. So I just wanted to just slot that in, that obviously we didn't have any representation from them whatsoever. So they were happy with what we'd applied for.
That's fine. You can say that at the end when you're summing up your case as well. Thank you. Mrs. Reid, do you have any questions? Oh, you're on mute there. Sorry.
Yeah, okay. Only the point at the end there that I think as any, I know this isn't a court, but as any court will tell you that the absence of evidence is not proof to the contrary. So I think the fact that the environmental health haven't chosen to come and talk to us as residents, done any measurements and so on and so forth, I don't think that means to say that they are happy with the situation.
Thank you for that point there. Mr. Williams, do you have any questions of Councillor Symes at all?
No, not at this time.
And the same for Mr. Brindley.
No, thank you.
Thank you. I'll move on to Mr. Williams. If you'd like to state your case, please. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak. Obviously, my name is Paul Williams. I live in Wilkinson House and have a background and a master's degree in risk management. At this hearing, I'm representing John Beardle and myself. We both have apartments that overlook the Memorial Gardens, which means that we are very close to the former museum building. Firstly, we would say that we are delighted, as has already been said, that the building is being restored to the level of elegance it deserves. We also understand it is only reasonable that the hotel should be allowed to conduct its business and be successful. It is also reasonable that we can continue to live in a quiet residential location. Based on the licence application, we do not believe the balance is equitable at the moment and therefore represents a high risk to our quality of life. In our opinion, the application does not meet the licensing objective for the prevention of public nuisance and potentially the public safety objective as well. By way of context, John and I both have a long association with Portsmouth and chose to move into Marine Gate some years ago because it is a quiet conservation area that suited our needs, especially as we get older. The area has a calm and peaceful feel and the residential amenity is very pleasant. I believe the risk is high to our quality of life when you consider the licence application in terms of its potential impact and the likelihood there will be a noise nuisance. As I have said, this is a quiet location. There is very little background noise, and having lived here for many years, we can say that the effect of noise, especially at night, is heightened. Therefore, the impact is potentially high, especially as our bedrooms and sitting rooms face the hotel and have large single glazed windows, which, as Penny has already said, cannot be changed easily. The current licence application also creates the conditions for noise nuisance to occur. This is because outdoor events will still be running and being cleared up after 11 p.m. when noise limits are lower. Also, for both indoor and outdoor activity, visitors, hotel staff and event support personnel will be making their way home up until 3 a.m. in the morning with the associated noise. These conditions mean that the likelihood for a noise nuisance is high. We have some experience of this. When the hotel held wedding events, they generated significant amounts of noise. In the main, the museum management were good neighbours and finished their events by 11 p.m. This was partly because the venue was non-residential and therefore had an obvious end point to its activity, which is different to a hotel. However, there were sometimes there were high levels of noise beyond the time due to people leaving, people being slow to leave and under the influence of alcohol, which impacted our ability to sleep. Although noise complaints were made, the key point for us is that the events and the high levels of noise were very infrequent. It is for these reasons that John and I opposed the licence application. I appreciate the committee must balance the needs of the hotel and the residents. I only ask that risks of noise nuisance within quiet residential conservation area to be fully considered. If it is not handled sensitively, granting a perpetual licence could change the whole ambience of the area in which we live. We would therefore ask you to consider reducing the licensing hours to 10 p.m. with the option of the temporary event notices as required. This would seem to be a more balanced approach. Thank you for giving me the time to speak and the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams. I just want to go to our licensing solicitor, Mr. Ben Attrell, because he'd like to just address a few points that have happened throughout this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Good. Yes, there's just been a few points that have sort of come up during the general discussion, so I have to jump in somewhere. Apologies if I'm interrupting the flow of questioning. First point I've got noted is there's been mention of the lack of representation from environmental health, and that you can't draw a false negative from that. The guidance, statutory guidance to the Act, to which the licensing authority has to have consideration, makes it very clear that the responsible authorities are considered to be the experts in their relevant fields, and all responsible authorities have to be consulted as part of the application process. And if a responsible authority chooses, after having been consulted, not to make a representation, there is a natural inference that has to be drawn that they are accordingly effectively happy with the proposals. It doesn't go much further than that, but that's the position, and that's what the statutory guidance suggests is the proper approach when considering a lack of representation from the responsible authorities. There was mention of temporary event notices and whether it be 10 or 12. It's actually 15 if it's a licensed premises, as long as the cumulative length of time does not exceed 21 days. And there's mention of planning control. At one stage you asked Chair, about whether planning can restrict the use of smoking areas. I'm not really qualified to comment on the planning side of things off the cuff. And it's, in any event, what the planning committee can or cannot do is not the consideration for this subcommittee. And to start to sort of delve into that area may cause issue with the decision making. But what I can tell you is that the licensing authority and the licensing subcommittee can impose conditions if they consider it relevant and appropriate after having heard all the evidence, restricting use of outdoor areas, or whether that be for smoking or for other purposes, providing there is a nexus, if you like, a sufficient link between that and the actual licensable activity. So it has to be something that is regulated by the act that you're actually controlling, and not just something that could in any event occur irrespective of whether or not they have a premises license. And then the final point that I noted was there's been, and it's often unfortunately a common misconception with the general public as to how the Licensing Act works. When a license is granted, it's not set in stone. It is a moving feast, and it is constantly subject to the potential for review, reconsideration, and so if I know that there's been mention of a perpetual license. I made note of that remark. That's not the case. Just to reassure residents that there is a review procedure that can be initiated by any person, so a resident or the responsible authorities, so the police, environmental health, whichever relevant or responsible authority wishes to initiate a review of the premises license, or indeed an individual resident could, providing, of course, there's sufficient evidence, then on the back of that review, it would come to a hearing much like this. The licensing authority then would be in a position to impose conditions, restrict the operation of the premises, or indeed, ultimately, could potentially revoke the license. So what the scheme does under the Licensing Act 2003, it gives, and I apologise, Chair, if I'm going off on a little bit of a ramble here, but I think it's helped everybody involved in the hearing to understand. What the Licensing Act does is it creates a lot of leniency for those applying for licenses in the first instance, and it effectively allows applicants, in a lot of instances, rope with which to hang themselves, because very much the system seems to be weighted in favour of those making applications where there aren't solid evidence, justifiable reasons for restricting proposals to be allowed to do what they propose, generally speaking. Not to say that any of the representations today are not in any way valid, any way, shape or form. That's not true. But it's effectively geared to handing applicants the rope with which to hang themselves, effectively, so the scope to operate. And in the event that they don't operate sensibly or responsibly, there are very significant and strict controls that can be imposed to actually address issues if and when they do arise. But I'm going to stop there. I could speak all day, but hopefully that assists everybody.
No, thank you, Ben. It's very obvious that we do need the education on this front. Whilst I might be the chair of the licensing committee, I've had to learn many things over the past 2 years that I've been chair, and I'm still picking up things every single day. And also, I can tell that you're one of the litigators for the council as well, because you do get your point across quite well. So well done, Ben, at this point. Councillor Ashmore has his hand up before I go on to questions from Mr. Williams.
I do. I just, for the clarity of the committee, really, on what Ben's just explained there. When you say people can bring it back to a hearing with sufficient evidence, I'm imagining that's not just councillors or council officers, that is residents, people who will be affected by this. They can bring it back. So if a licence was granted, even if a licence was granted with whatever hours on it, if they feel there's been a breach, anyone can bring that back. But they just come to us.
Absolutely. The licensing authority itself can bring a premises back for review. The responsible authorities can, as can an individual. It's probably advisable if an individual is experiencing noise nuisance in particular to liaise with the Environmental Health Department, because, as I've said before, there is a lot of much more gravity to a representation from them, given that they have to be accepted as being the experts in their field. So if a resident is experiencing a noise nuisance, they can liaise with environmental health. Hopefully, working with environmental health, a representation then can be brought, led by environmental health. But under the statutory scheme, if a single resident wishes to commence a review, they can make a representation to that effect and can actually instigate that process on their own. So there are very strong safeguards for the general public moving forward.
Thank you. So there's that safety valve there, because I know people can see councils being needlessly over bureaucratic sometimes in getting simple things done, but so with ease of reference they've got that safety valve there, just in case there's any worries that they have.
And I think when an application is received, the authority is duty bound to consider that application on the merits of the application that's before it, the terms of that application. So if you've got somebody that's telling you, we are going to open a 5-star hotel, we are going to run this as a very high class establishment, you have to accept that evidence on the face of it as it's presented to you, and you make your decision on the basis of that evidence. And accordingly, if 6 months later, a year later, 10 years later, actually what happens is entirely different, and you have a very, very different operation because it's changed hands. And I know a lot of people are often concerned about, well, yes, these people seem to be quite reasonable, but what could happen in the future if things change materially? There are processes in place to address it as when. It's not set in stone, as perhaps it may have been in the past.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you for indulging me, Chair.
Thank you. I have 2 hands up, so I'm going to just take them very quickly, but I'm trying to get back to the running order at this point. So, Councillor Symes.
Yes, the question I would like to ask is, it's all very well. We sit here today saying, oh yeah, you can go for review. Yes, you can get them back. But the awful truth of the matter is, you sometimes have to live with months and months and months of gathering evidence, of getting everything into place, which is untenable when you have your peace completely destroyed. I mean, surely it's better to put conditions in and then extend them if everything goes well, than put very late conditions in and then have to go through the whole process of coming to you again to try and get them restricted.
Chair, I don't know if you wanted me to respond to that quickly. Obviously, it's a fine balance, and what you have as a subcommittee have to do is assess the risk, and the licensing objective is the prevention of public nuisance. If you think on the basis of the evidence that you've heard that there's sufficient risk that the prevention of public nuisance objective is going to be undermined, then it's quite reasonable for you to implement steps to prevent them. However, of course, when you're faced with an application for a new premises, the evidence is far less substantial than when you have a premises that is operating and is actually causing those issues, and there's evidence of that in front of you. So it's a very difficult balancing game.
Thank you there. Mrs. Reid.
A quick question, thank you, Chair. For Mr. Astral, and hopefully that the applicants will address in their closing summary, and that is it appropriate to grant a premises licence to a premise that isn't actually operating as a hotel? Maybe the applicant in their summary also can say why they're applying for this so far in advance of the hotel even coming to a point of getting its plans approved for the development and then final opening, which we understood was at least a couple of years away.
I have to go back to what I said before. When you have an applicant that is coming to the licensing authority with an application, with a proposal to operate in a particular manner, it has to be assessed and accepted on the merits of that application. The licensing subcommittee cannot consider the planning merits, whether or not it's likely to get planning permission, and it's always a chicken and egg situation. Unfortunately, we are faced with this situation where we do have such a very clear divergence between licensing and planning. It probably would be helpful if the two were more integrated, but unfortunately, the subcommittee cannot consider planning considerations and cannot consider the likelihood of planning approval. It's just a matter of approving it on the basis of the application that's before it.
Thank you for the answer to that question. So I would ask that the applicant perhaps addresses that in due course as to whether there is any intention to hold events prior to the development of the hotel and all its infrastructure in terms of CCTV, concierge and security people.
I mean, what I would also stress is that the grant of a premises license does not in itself obviate the need for other authorizations and consents. So if building control approval is required, if planning permission is required, those still need to be acquired and implemented before any activities take place that might require those consents. So it is unfortunate that you have these two separate limbs, both providing authorizations for the same activity, but fortunately that's the situation we have. But it's down to the applicants to make sure they have the relevant appropriate consents in place, whatever it is they're intending to do.
Thank you.
Ben, can I chip in as well, please? The applicant has agreed conditions. You look at the application, they've agreed conditions with the police. So if the license is granted, however it finally is granted, those conditions will automatically be part of the license. So if they chose to run an event before the hotel is actually fully developed, they would have to comply with all the conditions on the license. They couldn't just not bother to have CCTV. So you could be rest assured there that they would have to comply with all the conditions that are on the license from the word go.
Thank you, Derek.
Thank you there. Whilst we did go off a bit course a little bit, I'm grateful for the knowledge and information and the opportunity to maybe pick up questions that we didn't ask in the first tranche. Mr. Williams has just spoken, so I'm going to ask the applicants, do you have any questions of Mr. Williams' representation? I know that Mrs. Reid had said something, but you can bring that up at the end when you're summing up your case, that's fine. But do you have any questions for Mr. Williams?
Can I just say that I appreciate the clarity that was just added to a lot of the discussions. The only thing that worries me a little bit is the amount of rope that the licensing committee seems to be giving out for hanging people. And I thought hanging had been done away with a few years ago in this country. So, but I do appreciate the clarity that's been given. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, I forgot to ask members, do you have any questions of Mr. Williams at all? I don't. I assume that you don't either.
No, at this time, thank you.
Thank you.
Nothing
Mrs.
from me, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Coles. Mrs. Reid, do you have any questions of Mr. Williams? No, I can see you shaking your head. It's fine. You don't have to be on. Councillor Symes, same again. And Mr. Brindley, did you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Mr. Brindley, it's now your time to speak anyway. So if you'd like to take the floor.
Hi.
Hello.
What the comments that have been made by Penny and Paul Williams cover everything that I would want to talk about, apart from one particular thing. On the handwritten license application by Helen Hubbard, in section C, and again, whether this falls into the license committee, I'm not sure. The section C talks about the swimming pool, and it talks about the swimming pool being open at 24 hours a day. Now, maybe you can help me. Is that relevant to this particular licensing, or should it be part of the planning application?
Chair, are you happy for me?
But the implication is that noise from the swimming pool can be there for 24 hours a day.
Yeah, I'll be planning what it's not covered by us and licensable activities.
Well, I think where it strays into the licensable activity is where it's a sporting event. So if there is some sort of competition that's held in front of an audience, it then becomes a licensable activity. I'm sure Derek will pick me up if I've misquoted that, but that's my understanding, and I suspect that's why it's falling within the realms of the application, just to cover them for every and any potential. And that's the other thing with licensing applications, generally speaking, is they do tend to try to be all-encompassing. They try to think of every single possible connotation in terms of the use of their premises, and therefore, at first glance, a licensing application appears very wide and really can be quite, at first glance, quite horrendous to those looking at it. But the reality is they're drafted often in such a way as to capture every possible way they may wish to use their premises going forward. And the likelihood is it's not ever going to be used to the full extent of those hours.
Thank you. If you'd like to continue, Mr. Brindley.
Yes, the point is that it's unlikely, you say, but it could happen. So you could, in theory, have 12 or 15 people in that swimming pool that have come in under the influence of alcohol and be shouting, jumping in the pool, making noise at 4 o'clock in the morning. Surely that's unreasonable.
It may well be, but unfortunately, the only instance in which that would be a licensing concern is if it were a sporting event. And I would suggest most sporting events are likely to include the use of alcohol.
So why are the hours for 24 hours then? Why don't they limit the actual hours that can happen within the swimming pool?
I can't speak for the applicant. You need to put that to them, but I suspect there's just been some confusion, and they've just took the widest hours to cover everything, every possible conceivable activity. But you'd need to put that to them, obviously.
Well, maybe the applicants can answer that when they sum up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions? Members, do you have any questions of that?
Not at the moment, Chair.
Thank you very much. Applicants, do you have any questions to come? I say questions because, like I said, you can sum up in a moment. You're going to get your chance to completely sum up everything that's been said in this meeting. So, do you have any questions of that representation at all?
Not at the moment. I think we'll deal with it, you say, during the summing up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Say again for Mrs. Reid, do you have any questions of that deputation? No. Councillor Symes? No. Thank you very much, Mr. Williams. No, I'd assume that no one has any questions for the representations. We'll move on to summing up now. So the process for summing up is that I'm going to ask Mr. Derek Stone to just sum up his report again, and then we'll move to the people that have made representations before we move to the applicants so they can have the final word. We will then adjourn. We'll end the meeting, as it were, and the councillors, our free subcommittee with the observer as well, will go into private deliberations where maybe, well, hopefully we'll make a decision and you'll all be informed by the end of play today, hopefully by telephone call or email, and that would be it. Normally, if we were meeting in kind of in real life, as it were, we'd adjourn the meeting and you'd all come back at a certain time because we'd probably made the decision by then. But now we have to end the meeting formally and then we privately deliberate. I just want to say to people, those who are summing up, especially when you give them representations, now is the time to ask additional questions if you need to see if the applicant can answer those questions, and then we can just get everything down to a nice, comfortable end. So we're ready to deliberate privately. So I'd like to move to Mr. Stone. Thank you.
Members, you'll be pleased to know I've nothing further to add. The notice, they have to have a formal notice of the decision. Everybody needs to have that sent to them. So what I'll probably do to expedite things is send it by email first and then prepare the notice, but the actual formal notice probably won't go out until tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Thanks for that. Then I'd like to move on to Mrs. Reid, if you'd like to sum up. Thank you.
I'm not going to take any more of the committee's time. I think to repeat all the things you said, I think they've been well versed. And to paraphrase Mr. Elliott, I don't think anybody is seeking to hang anybody. As we have repeated, we really want this venture to succeed. We don't want to see the Royal Marines Museum fall into the same state of disrepair as Fort Cumberland. So anything that we can do to cooperate with you, and we have extended this offer to the Grand Hotel Excelsior Group, please just get in touch with us. If let's not keep having to come to committee. Let's have a positive and adult relationship that ensures that we are good neighbours to each other. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask Councillor Symes to sum up. Thank you very much.
Yes, not very much to say. Really, I think when you have your deliberation and you think about this, try and think about the quality of lives of those people who are living there, that you have it in your ability to affect enormously when making a decision to allow people outside until midnight. A lot of those people have to go to work, they have busy daytime lives, they need to go to sleep at night. And I don't think 11 o'clock is unreasonable to be outside. And if they want to continue their festivities, they can go back in. I do hope you give this your greatest consideration and realise that the quality of these people's lives is really important. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Symes. Mr. Williams, if you'd like to sum up, please.
Yes, I would agree entirely with Councillor Symes. I mean, John and I are both very close to the hotel, or the proposed hotel, and we know that noise can be an issue even now. And we would really appreciate it if our quality of life was not impacted, and we could continue to live in a reasonable, if you like, residential amenity. So, from our point of view, if something was even restricted back to 10 o'clock, which allows noise to stop at that time so that it could be allow for clearing up until 11 o'clock. And we still have the issue of people leaving the hotel late at night and sound echoing around the courtyard. So I understand it's a difficult thing, and for all getting the balance right between us and the hotel. But from my point of view, the risk just looks too high at the moment. And I understand the point about evidence, but the problem is that the evidence that you're talking about is pretty weak. If you were to yes, I understand. The evidence is a written piece of paper. It's not real evidence. It's an intention. It's not. Whereas the evidence that we've been talking about is real evidence. People, I can tell you that it's noisy. Yeah, I can tell you that the background noise is very low. Yeah, and there is an opportunity now to make a lot of noise late at night, and that's the bit that we've got a problem with. So, I would appreciate some consideration of this by the committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams. I'd like to move on to Mr. Brindley now, if you'd like to sum up. Thank you.
My only comment is that people have discussed that one size does not fit all, But my only comment is, why should one area of Portsmouth with its licensing application be treated any differently to any other area of Portsmouth? And we don't have any first-hand knowledge of what the other hotels within this group, where they're sited, what they're like, what the noise comes from. So really, we are just looking at our own vicinity here, and for hopefully you will look at it and see that there shouldn't be any difference between a 4-star and a 5-star hotel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brindley. So that would bring us to summing up by the applicants today, and then we can end the meeting. So if you'd like to sum up your case, thank you very much.
Well, first of all, Chair, I thank you everybody that's made the comments. There's some very good comments, and we appreciate it very much, and we appreciate people's concern. I think, however, in the application that's been put forward, these concerns were considered. We are very conscious that, you know, we got residents around us. And if I could just take a simple example of, you know, 12 people that's had too much to drink in a swimming pool at 2 o'clock in the morning, I can assure you that our own security and our own management will be shutting that down very, very quickly. It's in our interest to keep the whole premises in good order. And I do believe, as the solicitor has said, that it's like your driving license. You get your driving license, and the moment you go speeding, you're going to lose your license if you're not careful. But you've got to at least be granted a license. And I sincerely believe that the rules and regulations are there to take care of it. If we don't behave and we don't do it properly, then we can lose the license very, very quickly. And we're very, very conscious of that. You know, what part of the building now, the whole central structure, people with the grade 2 listing and all the facade, everybody wants to leave it, the planners want to leave it, and people want to use it. And we've been already requested that they want some of the celebrations, you know, like Memorial Days. They want next year, for example, we've been asked, because I think it's the 30th anniversary of the Falklands War, and they want, you know, they want to make a big event there. We've been already told that on Remembrance Days, there's, you know, at least thousands of people that turn up. Now, some of these things are also new to us, and I agree with Penny that we're wanting to work together. We've given our assurances that we want to still keep the memorials, and we want to keep the references and all the goodwill towards the Royal Marines. So there's a lot of that we're having to learn. We're not sure how many's going to turn up and how many's going to want a cup of coffee or, you know, something, but we've got to be ready with a license. We don't want to say, oh, sorry, we can't hold any events here because we got no license. So as the solicitor is saying, you know, let's get the license and then let's work towards it. And then if we don't behave, or people think that we're out of order, then there's sufficient ways for you to deal with us, and we're very conscious of that. So I would, in summing up, say I believe our proposal for a license was set out very clearly. I think Helen has done a lot of work in, you know, putting the information, and that there was no major objections from, you know, the major people, and I think that was a good sign. And I believe we should all look forward to a very good asset coming to Portsmouth, and seeing if a 5-star hotel is going to be something that Portsmouth wants. I sincerely hope it is. So I leave my case there. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Elliott. Yeah, for years we've had numerous reports in the press about 5-star hotels coming here, there and everywhere. And I would assume by the nature of everyone in this meeting, even those giving representations, is that we're really looking forward to having a 5-star hotel in the city. And I'm very grateful, at least for someone to be here to speak today, to tell us all about that too. Councillor Ashmore's put his hand up, so I think he just wants to say something about it as well.
Yeah, it was just, Yeah, just to make some comments on that. We don't want to, this isn't going to be, whether they get a license or no license. Everyone wants to work together from what I'm seeing. And it seems to be we want to make sure it's a good license that suits everyone in the area there. 5-star hotels have got a lot of, to get to be a 5-star hotel, it's not just something they hand out. You've got to make sure that you're on top of everything every single time. So of course there is that element that if you're going to get too many complaints or it gets a bad press, they might lose that star rating. You could argue it might even become kind of self-regulating in that aspect. That the onus is on them to keep up, the service and the respect of the neighbours there, which is good. And also when it comes to noise, I mean, a lot of the objections are about noise, and rightfully so. If you live in the area, that's going to be what you're concerned about. I don't think anyone's brought anything spurious here. I think these are legitimate concerns of residents in the nearby area. It's where they live. They haven't moved into where there's already a hotel there. They've moved into somewhere where it's the other way around, isn't it? There's a hotel going to where you live there. But if there's too much noise going on, of course, it would disturb the guests in the hotel as well. So there's the onus is on the hotel to make sure that the noise is kept to a minimum, or at least well regulated. The only thing that I haven't brought up that one of the objections did mention when it comes to noise is not so much the noise of the guests, etc. It was of, is there going to be a time and place, a respectable time and place for the deliveries or the glass and the waste being emptied? Because that will also figure into noise as, vehicles are pulling in and out and glass is being taken from bin to bin, etc. Is there anything in place for that? Am I allowed to ask that, Chair? Just as a
You are allowed to ask that because
Yeah.
we're allowed to mandate for that, aren't we? If we felt responsible, if we felt it was just
because I think that would be part.
Put down a note license. So Ben can chime in.
Yeah, far better to ask it now than to end the meeting and not be able to. Indeed.
Yeah.
As long as every party has an opportunity to comment or raise any issue as a result.
Yeah, if the applicant could say if they've got that in mind, and we can consider that as part of conditions, maybe.
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, clearing away the waste and the rubbish and all these things, and it's always a big issue. But I can assure you that we're more conscious of that, because if your trucks turn up and disturb all the residents in the hotel, you're not going to live very long with it. So basically, we can get some of that rope, and we would end up hanging ourselves if we get the trucks in at the wrong time of the day or night. So I take your point. It is to keep and maintain a 5-star hotel and keep the quality. It is very much self-regulating, and we've got to make sure that we stay in order at all times. Otherwise, as we say, we'll lose the license anyway, or we'll lose the stars. So it's in our interest to make sure it's run properly and run well.
Okay, thank
Members, this was actually touched on in the reply or the response from the applicant at Appendix E. They do talk about in the letter that they will be mindful of delivery times, etc., etc. So if you go to the letter Appendix E, Councillor Ashmore, you can see that they are aware of that and they have taken that on board.
Excellent stuff. Okay, so long as that obviously is in the public arena now, that's a part of the considerations for us to take back. Thank you, and thank you for your response there.
Thank you. I'm going to just thank you all once again for attending this morning. It's been quite a pleasant licensing meeting. I've been to really horrible ones, and I'm always concerned when it comes down to neighbours and applicants, because sometimes it is really bad, but it seems like we're on quite a friendly footing today, which is lovely. So I'm going to end the meeting here. I'd like to thank you for your time. Go and enjoy.
Chair, before you close the meeting, as we've stepped outside of our normal procedure, can you just double check? I don't think I can't see anybody jumping up and down. But just in case, only because the applicant has been given an extra opportunity to speak. If anybody else wants to say anything in relation to that point in particular. No, perfect.
Penny, Mrs.
Sorry,
Reid.
just one thing I would just say. Stuart, Helen, Pamela, please contact Marine Gate Management Company and let us set up, as close as we can get during COVID, and as soon as the restrictions are lifted, we can actually probably meet face to face.
We certainly welcome that invitation. As you know, we have been very severely limited to what we can do with the COVID regulations, but we're looking forward very much to sitting down with you, and let's all make this a success for everybody.
Thank you.
Well, that's lovely, isn't it? Thank you for today, and we'll resume with our deliberations. Members, we've got a separate link. I'm just going to suggest a quick 10 minutes for comfort break and getting a cup of coffee before we meet again, if that's all right, because I'm desperate for a cup of tea. I will see you in 10 minutes, and have a lovely day, everyone. See you again soon. Thank you.
Capital suggestion, Chair. Thank you very much, everybody.
Lisa, could you do the box thing? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just going to stop the live stream. Thank you.
You're still on live for another few seconds.